Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 3. Thank you, producer, host. Thank you. I really appreciate it. All right. Now we had to go ahead on and got to work around the issues. So we came back to do a retake. That's how we do it. Well, Monkey don't stop no show. But I like to say halito, de estamos chi, and I don't know if it's in retrograde or what's happening. Somebody said the flares, cousin Cameron, he having issues, you know. But we're gonna see what it do this time. She gave me thumbs up, said everything's okay. So I'm gonna wait till some more people come in and everything. And while we waiting for some more people to come in, because Christina can actually put up the flyers and everything in the um disclaimer. I like to give big shout out to the producer slash host of the Southeastern Talking Stick, Christina. She do her thing. You heard me. I hope y'all can hear me loud and clear. So we're just waiting for the um the flyers and everything to roll after the disclaimer. I'm gonna have to learn how to do these controls. All right, tonight's topic is why do people think that African descent were the only ones that was classified as Freedmans? All right, all right, all right. Okay, okay, okay. And we're gonna she'll producer for a reason. And that's the donation, right? Every little bit helps, you know. I love the disclaimer. That's the best part of the beginning of the show. Yeah, that's the best part of the show that I like. It's some things that has been seen on social media about the Freemans and how people speaking on the Freemans, but yet people them thinking that Freemans is only classified for African descendants, and it wasn't, And I'm going to show you some slides and everything that's dealing with that and stuff. Just waiting for some more people to come on in and everything. Gotta let everybody know on Facebook that we back on. So, so yeah, just waiting for some more. Come on. You got music? Oh, we got music. So so yeah. So we're gonna go ahead on and I'm gonna pull up my DM to actually show y'all dealing with the information, right? All right, I'm about to share the screen. Everybody will see it when they come in, right? All right, in the archives, they say dealing with adults enrollment card of 1898 and 1907. These sometimes and grandparents are listed as full-blooded Choctaw or full-blooded Creek or full-blooded Cherokee. This shows the reclassification over ancestry reality. It goes on to say that the Choctaw, the Creeks, and the Cherokee example, some well-known document cases, not exclusively, of the Creek Nation, spoke Muskogee, practiced the Creek customs, and yet enrolled as a freeman. Then you had Sarah Wilson, a Cherokee, parents listed as Indian by blood, and she was classified as a freeman. And then you had Joe Brown, a Choctaw, an Indian community member, but racialized as a freeman. Many of these cases appear in the final Dawes rolls, also interview testimonies, Indian pioneer histories, and the Choctaw and Creek enrollment protests, right? Then it spoke about the blood quantum contradictions. You will find entries like person equals free man, father equals full-blooded Choctaw, or the rest of the five civilized tribes, or the rest of the four, right? Or mother equal full-blooded Choctaw, and the rest of the other four of the out of five civilized tribes, right? That is a direct contradiction, proof that the freeman was sometime a racial label, not a genealogical one or reality, right? So it was used as a racial label because if you look like a Negro, then you would be classified as a freeman. And that's why you got people thinking that freeman was only applied to African descent, but that wasn't true. because you had full-bloodeds that was actually made freedmen. So now you got people that talk about, oh, there was no Negro Indians. Well, it had to be Negro Indians in order for them to be labeled as freedmen, right? Because if they looked at other than, right? If they looked at other than, then they wouldn't have been classified as a freeman. But yet, since they look like Negroes, their racial label became known as freemen. Okay? Don't argue with me, go argue with the documents. Now, it said that the freemen not only equal African only, they say, contrary to popular belief, freeman status did not exclusively mean African descent. It often meant person of dark complexion, non-white, but not accepted by the Indian by the U.S. standards, outside a racial comfort zone of federal officials. They say this result in the Indian family split between blood and freeman roles. Siblings classified differently. Entire Indian community racialized out of their own identity, right? Stop. And then that's where it said where to find proof today. If you want actual records, they exist in the National Archives, right? In the 403, the Dawes Commission Index Cards, the Choctaw Citizenship Court Files, and many others, the Freedmen Testimony Transcripts, and the Indian Territory Census Rolls, right? Now, this gets very interesting. The blood quantum was not created by indigenous nations, which it wasn't. It was invented by and imposed by the U.S. government of colonial authorities as a tool of control. I'll read it again. The blood quantum was not created by indigenous nations. It was invented and imposed by the U.S. government and colonial authorities as a tool of control. Well, what you mean by that, Chatupa? Well, here's a clear breakdown. Who created the idea of the blood quantum? Answer: the U.S. federal government in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The blood quantum was standardized by the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is the BIA, and the Dawes Commission. They say in 1893 and 1914. The U.S. Congress, through a series of assimilation laws, they say it proposed, but it was political and economic. So somebody was making money off it because the purpose wasn't cultural. But yet you're supposed to be a sovereign nation. So how could the United States impose the blood quantum on your nation if you're a sovereign nation? Being federally recognized don't mean that you're actually sovereign. My cousin and I did a couple of months ago speaking about the pros and cons of being federally recognized, right? In the United States government is the trustee of all federal recognized lands that became reservations, right? But hey, who am I to put that information out there? But we did. Ain't that right, cuz? Okay. Now it goes on to say why blood quantum was created. It was designed to limit the numbers of legal recognized Indians, right? Reduce treaty obligations, break up tribal lands holdings, speed up native land transfers and not indigenous settlers. They say eventually eliminate tribal status through generations. This is documented policy, not theory. So that's to let y'all know. It is documented policies and not theory. It's not theory, it's law, right? Because policies become laws, right? And it said the key laws that enforced blood quantrums. The Dawes Act of 1887 established individual allotments and require blood measurements to decide who was a full blood, a mixed blood, a freedman, or non-Indian, right? And then it said that the Curtis Act of 1898 extend the blood quantum enforced into Indian territory, right? But let me say something on this, right? When they speak about full blood, and then they talk about mixed blood. But see, a mixed blood will be an admixture, right? And also a free will be considered as mixed blood as well. Because when everything was going on with the wars and stuff, indigenous women having children for those people who came from West Guinea and had children by them. So that was a mixed child. But dealing with tribal law, you are what your mother is. So if your mother was of the Fuaxi, right, then that child would be of that same clan, even though it would have had an African father, but it has an indigenous mother. So that child will be a part of that mother's clan. That's tribal law, right? Dealing with tradition. But the blood quantum is not dealing with tradition, right? And I think that's about to get ready to go to the next slide. See, there it go, right? Blood quantum versus traditional identity. Before colonization, identity was based on clan system. Like I just said, if the mother was of the Fugaski, right? That means the child will be of that same clan, right? Even though that child would have had an African father, but their mother was of indigenous clan of the Americas, dealing with that tribe, right? So that's the clan system. Kinship, which is also dealing with the clan system, because that's blood. And then you had those family who men that went to war, right? And most of the other men, they had to be adopted into the woman's clan who they had a child by. So he was taken in by adoption, okay? Dealing with the language, right? Participation, dealing with the clan system, dealing with the kinship, dealing with the adoption, dealing with the language, all that's dealing with the participation when you're dealing with the culture and the heritage, right? And then you have treaty affiliations, right? Because you had those nations who were treaty nations before the United States was even founded as a doggone nation. All right. Now, dealing with the blood quantum, it came back when it said that not the fractions like 1/2, 1/4, or 1/8. Those are colonial mathematics. When you blood, you blood. It didn't break you down into no fractions. But little do they know they came back to hurt them. But yet, the United States Congress has supposed to did away with blood quantum like not too long ago, like a couple of years ago, that they actually like disband the blood quantum, but you still have some tribes that still go by it, even though the United States and them saying that, hey, we're doing away with blood quantum, but yet you still have tribal nations that still use it. Why? Why? And then they say the real purpose, the blood quantum operate as a slow erasure mechanism, a mathematical extinction model. Each generation mathematically reduces tribal population on paper, eventually when culture remains. This is why many scholars call it paper genocide. But yet you have people don't even much look at it like that. Right? All right, Big Pontiac. All right, Nancy. The reason why, the reason why comic like that the people in them still using it, because you have to see who is in their government structure, right? You have to see who's in their government structure. And are they looking for the best interests of their tribal nation? Or are they looking for the best interests of the lining of their pockets? Right? What is the best interest that they would look? They will actually strengthen their nation if they do away with their foolishness called the blood quantum. But you know what's funny though? It seemed like it's basically systematically done to use the blood quantum against those that are those who have the appearance that look like a Negro. Because when it comes to the European side of their family, you don't hear them talking about no blood quantrums. Did you notice that? Right? It was actually used to keep the dark-skinned Indians who were full-blooded out from being traditionalists. Because that's what they kicked out. They kicked out the traditionalists. Because, like, when you go back and you look at the documentations from the 1890s when they said that the Creeks Nation was ran by Negro Creeks. So why is it not being ran by Negro Creeks anymore? And this was in 1890. Right? Let's see if I can pull that information up. I'm looking for if I can pull it up. I wish I had the document. Okay, let's see. 1819, 1890. Right? You had Black Creeks who actually held leadership in positions before 1890, right? And the term freedman was used to refer to them after the 1866 treaties with the United States that abolished slavery. So basically, you had Negro Creeks that was running the nation. Oh, she's still around. She's still around. I'm not alone. Just know that. Um, we actually have three hosts now, so she wanted to break up the segments and everything. She has her own that she just did last Sunday, and tonight it was me and cousin Caron, but he had technical difficulties, So I'm rocking solo today. That you only see me on the screen, but she's here though. But but yeah, that's what that was dealing with. So even before 1890s, you had Negroes that was in position that was running the Creek Nation. So what happened? What happened? Did things change at the hands of the guard when they did the Reconstruction? Huh? Right? So you saw the change of the guard when they did the Reconstruction. That's crazy. That's real crazy. So what they did back then and they doing today, it's no difference. They kicked them out back then they went and changed their constitution, right? And now the people are fighting back to say they're supposed to have the same established right. But yet, when I heard the attorney of the Black the Muskogee Freedmans, he said that his people been here. So if his people been here, that means his people was here before slavery. Now, he probably have an admixture, right? See, I wish I can play his video, but sometime, you know, the podcast don't let you play the video because of copyright infringement. But yeah, you can go back and you can go and listen to him when he was speaking about the battle that they had won to get citizenship according to the 1866 treaties. Right? But see, what most people don't know is that the 5 civilized tribes that's in Oklahoma, they was of a certain branch of the nation. And that branch of the nation became known as the White Sticks. Okay? There was the White Sticks. And they tried to mimic the United States government. This is why their elections, or the chief serves a 4-year term like the United States president. Why is that? That's not traditionally done. Y'all know how a maku is made into a maku? For them to have an election for a chief, that didn't happen like that traditionally. Right? But hey, who am I? So that's how all this come about. It was a change of guards. And that's what happened. So within its own tribal family is racism. And that's how it became paper genocide. Because when you throw the name Freeman out there, people in them think, oh, that's of African descent. But not all the time. I read it to you. You can go look in the archives. Because it's like, hold on. My mother and my father are full-blooded, but yet you got me labeled as a Freeman. How that happened? But see, people wasn't taking their time and reading back then. It's the family members of today who's going back, who's doing their genealogy, and they see this on them tribal card rolls, on the Dawes roll card, index cards. They start seeing it like, hold on, man. Like, hold on, right here they say great grandmother was full blooded and great grandfather is full blooded, but how our grandmother is a Freeman? How that happen? And you know, United States is good for that because what happens, right? Like they say, dealing with the census in Louisiana or anywhere in the South. If you was dark skinned and you wasn't on the Indian reservation, you was labeled as a mulatto, right? You was labeled as a mulatto. There was labeled as a mulatto in the 1800s. And then when the 1900s roll around, then it was labeled as what? Negro or black. So if the United States and them did that during the time dealing with the United States Census, which is actually dealing with the Department of Commerce, right? Because like they say, it was dealing with economics. And economics is dealing with what? It's dealing with money. It's dealing with commerce, right? Because the treaty obligations say you're supposed to take care of these nations. But to cut it, that means we don't have to do as much for a whole lot of people. We just only have to do for y'all. Isn't that crazy? That's real crazy and real low down. And that's still going on to this very day. Because you have people that will look at me, oh, you must be a Freedman. I had one person that said that, oh, you must have came off of such and such plantation. Your people must have came off of such and such plantation. Because you was on the plantation, does that make you a free man or a freeman? How can you change someone from their descendant nature that the Most High gave them? That's why it's called paper genocide. But y'all act like it doesn't exist. But yet the blood quantum itself is genocide. That's colonial genocide. But yet y'all want to look at other people and say, oh, you come from Africa, you come from that. Ain't nothing wrong with having an admixture. I already said it. You can have an African daddy and an indigenous mama. And you was brought up in the culture of your mother. Or it could be vice versa. You can have an indigenous father from over here in the Americas and an African mother. Right? So either way, right, the way how things going now, you can actually join a nation if your father was indigenous. So if your father was indigenous to the Americas and they had an African mother, that child still could become a part of his father's tribe. Traditionally, not modernized blood quantumly, if that's even a fucking word. But the thing is, they act like they don't have any admixtures. Because you just only looking at my brown skin. But it's crazy. It's crazy. They would let a European dictate to them about the blood quantum and about who their family members are by birth, by kinship, by clanship, but you want to use colonial mathematics. And their mathematics ain't right any goddamn way. It's not right. It's off. Hello. Greetings. But it's just crazy how it's just crazy. Because your father probably was from the Beaver clan of that nation, and your mother probably was of the Bird clan of that nation, and that what made them full. And then when they had you, right, that should have also made you full, right? Because you followed your mother. The Europeans them knew about the belly of the law. And we say it all the time in the hood, as they say, dealing with the belly of the law, because it was used in court cases. The European know that the child follow the mother. That's how it has always been in nature, where the child follows the mother. The cubs, right, follow mama bear and the felineness and the bison, right? In the laws of Virginia and South Carolina, they said that if the mother is a slave, then the child is a slave. If the mother is a free person, then that child is a free person. It said nothing about the father. And then you had Indians in the 1700s actually winning court cases because they was labeled as Negroes. But when they proved that there was of an Indian nation and the Indian nation vouched for them, guess what? They were set free. But see, people don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about that. Because only thing they want to do is go by lookership or lookology. And that's what that was dealing with. The U.S. census takers was doing the same thing. When the people in their household who they went to told them that they were Choctaw or Chickasaw or whatever nation, they were like, oh, okay. They did it right then and there. But soon when they got to their office, it was like, oh, they Negroes. But you forgot they have records of Negro Indians. Just like my nephew and I, while their origins printed out to where they showed that the population of Negroes went up in Beaufort, South Carolina, because they took the Indians of Beaufort, South Carolina and labeled them as Negroes, and then the percentage of Negroes in Beaufort, South Carolina went up enormously. So if these Indians didn't look like Negroes, why call them Negroes if they didn't look like it? It was this like with dealing with King Philip's Road, right? And they had asked Yahuwah about slaves being taken amongst the Seminoles. He said, everyone here are Seminoles. There were no slaves here. Even dealing, said, bro, turn that down. And even when it was talking about dealing with the Seminole War, when they said that this is not an Indian war, this is a Negro war, right? But yet the reason why they say that, because they say there was no differentiation between the Africans and the Indians. You couldn't tell them apart. You couldn't differentiate which was which. And now you see why Europeans say that all niggas look alike. You know what movie showed you that? The movie Rosewood. The movie Rosewood. I'm pretty sure everybody saw it. If you haven't, go look it up. Go watch it. But when they had the band of white men, had got one guy, the black guy, right? And they said, where was you at, boy? You think you a Seminole boy? You think you a Seminole boy? Why would he tell a nigga that? Why would he tell a nigga that in the movie? Huh? Oh, you think you a Seminole boy? It's on a YouTube clip. Go look it up. Oh, you think you a Seminole boy? Dealing with Rosewood. Typed it in. Rosewood, you think you a Seminole boy, and watch it pop up. And then another thing is, it's just like the Jesus question, right? If you look at the Seminole today, those are the Seminole nations today. If you was to look at those that's of the Seminole nation today, how would Africans be able to live amongst them and blend in? If the Seminole nation of today was to have looked like the Seminole nation dealing with the first Seminole War, second Seminole War, and third Seminole War, how would Africans be able to live amongst them? Would they not stick out like a sore thumb? How would Negroes, even today, will be able to blend with the Seminoles of today? It stick out like a sore thumb, right? They wouldn't have to ask Andrew Jackson. I mean, Andrew Jackson would have to ask Osceola and them where the slaves at. They would have seen them. They'd be like, oh, they go to my African niggas right there. But they couldn't do that because for some reason they couldn't tell the Africans and the Seminoles apart. Right? They couldn't tell them apart. But that's a question to think about. If the Seminoles of today was to look like the Seminoles back then, or they would have been the Seminoles back then, how would Africans would have lived amongst them without being seen? Because they would have been seen and they would have stuck out like a sore thumb. You only can hide amongst people that you look alike, that you look like, and that you would look alike, right? But once again, hey, who am I? Anybody got any questions, any comments? If nobody don't have any comments or any questions, I can go ahead on and shut the show down. I'll tell y'all thank y'all for watching, and for the future viewers, peace and greetings to y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. We also have some merch. We have some new merch. Cousin Christina, she'll show the merch. You know, go ahead on and represent your favorite podcast. You know what I'm saying? Get you one if you don't have one, right? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you see that today. You see that with the five civilized tribes. You see that this very day. You see that this very day. Dealing with the five civilized tribes, those who have ancestry that's dealing with Irish. That's why those chiefs that you see today of the five civilized tribes look the way they look because of their Irishness, of their Irishness. That would happen. You have those that had fathers from the Irish. They had those that had fathers from the Scottish. You had those who had fathers from the British, fathers from the Spanish, fathers from the French, fathers from the Dutch, fathers from the Germans. Yeah, that part. That part. You know, that's how that happened. If you go and look at those chiefs of the five civilized tribes, you tell me, you tell me if they didn't have white men that they brought into their nation and had children by. That was the white sticks. That was the white sticks. It wasn't red sticks. That was the white sticks. But they need to get rid of that racism, though. They need to. I feel that if they was to get rid of the racism and the blood quantum, and they would let people in who can actually prove their genealogy to them, I think they can become a real powerful nation and autonomous. It wouldn't have to be under the tutelage of the federal government. They would actually be a real government. They wouldn't have to be under the tutelage. of the federal government. Because think about it. Everybody that they call it African Americans are not really African Americans. And even if there was to be the case, you know that the African Americans are the most consumers, right? They're the most consumers. They patronize. So just imagine all those that you call it African American, not really African American, but they of the tribal people that you shun. Just imagine if you if these people was to come into your nation and that could actually change for your nation economically. But see, they want to do that because now what that's going to happen is then the United States going to have some questioning coming at them. Because the first thing would have been like, you lied to these people. You say these people are African Americans while all along they are indigenous to this landmass. Or it's going to be hell to tell the captain. Even if those that have the admixture, it's still going to be hell to tell the captain. Just think about it. That means these people can actually stand on their own as an autonomous nation and wouldn't have to worry about being federally recognized. Because they'd be like, look, we self-sufficient. It doesn't matter if you want to recognize us or not. The only way you can actually recognize us if you want to do business with us. Right? So, yeah, that part. So, y'all seen the merch. Um, Anybody have any more questions or any comments, or do you want to come up on the panel right quick and kick it with me for a few minutes before we get off the live? We can do that. Well, um, well, y'all have a good night, and we'll holler at you next Sunday, same time, same channel. Holler at y'all later. Peace.